and cling to power. Adewale Ajadi, the executive director of the Equality Foundation, is a seasoned lawyer, economist, and public speaker. He tells us where we have gone wrong as citizens in our quests for free and fair elections.
Two things that you have to bear in mind. Most Nigerians are indigents, they're not citizens. They're born in this country, they have a sense of entitlement, but they're not brought up to take responsibility for, own their country, and determine or help to determine what standards of behavior are acceptable. If you ask 99% of Nigerians what's in the Nigerian Constitution, they don't know what it is. If you ask them what their rights and obligations is, they don't know. In fact, they should not, because if you pick the Nigerian Constitution, it's a dense, largely unreadable document if you're not a technocrat or a lawyer. Why should that be the basis of citizenship? So, I can reel off the reasons. Do you understand? But that doesn't mean there are no solutions, even at the state that we find ourselves in. It is going to be difficult to have 100% free, fair, all of that elections. The challenge is to have an election that is credible enough, fit for purpose, and actually reviewable in objective and transparent terms.
And so, with so much research under its belt, Wangonet, obviously not satisfied with the status quo, with respect to Nigeria's electoral practices, hooked up with other proactive entities, such as the British government's Department for International Development, DFID, group partners, and the Equality Foundation. Together, they all embarked on a journey to figure out how not to rig an election. With DFID picking up the tab and group partners utilizing its cutting-edge solutions platform known as visual thinking, Wangonet and Equality Foundation organized a stakeholders forum in which they invited 120 bright, forward-thinking individuals cutting across different professions, gender, religion, and so on.
This initiative which we are funding is a very innovative one, first of its kind, in terms of trying to see how ICT will be able to enhance the electoral process in Nigeria. GFID as an organization has serious interest in eliminating poverty. And we know that violent elections over time in Nigeria is the root cause of poverty in this country and conflict. So if we're able to attack the root causes of electoral malpractice in this country, we believe we are going to meet our objective of eradicating poverty in Nigeria. This is quite innovative, like I say, and the outcome of this is going to create an opening for possibly further support post-2011 election. Up until we get the outcome, we're not very sure of what next. But we're very optimistic that something good is going to come out of this initiative.
The DFID Wangonet Forum began with the registration and accreditation of the delegates, after which Mr. Lardner officially welcomed everyone. John Caswell, ably assisted by Adewale Ajadi and Aisha Osori, were the navigators of this very unique journey. John first broke down the entire process as drawn on the Great Wall for the delegates, listing out the 9 basic phases of the electoral system.
This discussion and what you see on the wall is as good as we can make it. No matter where on the planet, in every country, everybody has problems with elections, everybody has problems with government, everybody has problems with processes. This is no different. So 9 phases: announcement, registration, nomination, campaigning, pre-voting, voting, collating, counting, declaration.
Being a very interactive session, the delegates were quite eager to give their views and observations on the 9 listed phases. So we began with the announcement phase.
In the Nigerian context, what happens is that disorder is embedded into things like this. The element of disorder and distortions embedded in this stage 1 announcement are appointments. Hidden inside appointments are funds allocation and budgets. For this year, or last year, it took us all of 3 months to announce the head of the INEC. But while the delay was on, people were hiding funds and people in the structure. These are the booby traps that later on manifest in failure. So we have a catch-all word that says appointments come before the announcements. But here in Nigeria, those appointments have become an event all their own.
Then we move on to the registration.
On our table here, we've identified a few issues that has to do with the registration aspect. And then one of them is actually on the issue of poor and inadequate equipment. When you talk about registration and then the facilities we're using are not up to standard or they're not adequate to be able to attend to the number of people that we have in mind, then there's a gap there. Then the second one is actually on the issue of personnel. Human resources we're using, are they actually equipped enough? Are they actually trained to be able to offer that kind of service that we demand, that we require of them? And then the last one here is the issue of undue interference by the government on the process. Like you have, we've heard of cases of situations where certain places are being deprived of that registration. The personnel are not even allowed access to such areas, and then these people have to go in other areas to be able to register.
Which is followed by nomination.
One of the significant places we are looking at there is the lack of party democracy. Please, can you put the word internal there? Lack of internal party democracy. And then we are looking at some other issues as intimidation by party supporters.
And then campaigning.
Issues we've discovered are lack of security at the venue of the campaigns, especially like the Port Harcourt Stampede. The use of the imbalance in reportage by media houses of the campaigns.
Followed by pre-voting.
Polarization of voting centers. Because at the pre-voting stage, a lot of people feel that, okay, this is my constituency. Obviously, anything that goes, I can influence the way the voting will go on at that center. And the second thing has to do with this insecurity of the voting materials to be used. A very recent example is the DDC materials. Just at the airport, the following day, at the international airport, the following day, some machines were missing. This is very critical. Then lastly, there's a need for us to ensure that there's last-minute awareness about the votes.
And then, of course, voting.
Problems we envisage in voting processes include delayed arrival of voting materials, intimidation of voters by political talks, inadequate provision for physically challenged voters, intimidation of other political parties' agents by the ruling party or the most popular party in that locality, and we have party agents and others who take advantage of illiterate, illegible voters to sway their votes to wherever they want it.
And collating.
We have multiple voters registration. Like this, you have people registering twice. Again, we have hijacking of ballot box. And again, illegal changing of polling units.
And finally, counting.
Attempts by the prominent party to stop to counting. Overzealous security officials may cause confusion. Intimidation and compromise by party education. Lack of desire by voters to protect their votes. And finally, nervous counting can lead to wrong figures.
Before the declaration.
Integrity of the returning officer at this point, because we find out that most times people get the correct results, and when it comes to their table, it takes the level of sincerity of such a person who is made the returning officer to come to bear at this point. It takes somebody who is accountable, who is credible, who has integrity to actually say, I'm announcing the correct result, I'm announcing the right result. I'm not influenced by anybody, to make me announce the wrong result.
Having identified the real shortcomings of our electoral process,